Dave Case, welcome to Old School Cops, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Lou. I really appreciate the opportunity to talking to you.
I appreciate you coming in and helping us out. My first question, of course, would be, whatever made you decide to be the police?
That's really funny. It's a long story. I'll try and cut it down a little bit. Trying to get through college, and I got put on double secret probation, and so I was having to work almost full time to pay for school, and I started working a security job in Minneapolis. I was going to University of Minnesota. I was working a security job on the west bank of the campus on an apartment complex it was a whole city block of apartment buildings, and it went from 3 or 4 low income buildings to one high end income building. And I worked with a bunch of guys and girls that wanted to be the police. And at that time I thought I was going to be a pilot, but Mr. Calculus kicked my ass up one side of campus and down the other. So I had to change my options. And I started studying art. I liked to paint and stuff, and didn't really know what I was going to do with my life. But I really was enjoying working with all these men and women that wanted to be the police. It got me to thinking, you know what? I really like this job, and we worked closely with Minneapolis police. I'm like, this is something I'd like to do. So when I started looking into becoming the police in Minnesota, you have to go to 2 years of very specific school to get your associate's degree, essentially, in law enforcement. I had almost 5 years of college in one class applied. So I was looking at going to 2 more years of school. I was like, that ain't going to happen. So I started looking elsewhere. And one of my best friend's sisters had married a kid from Chicago whose dad was a detective. And he said, come on down. This is 1985. It was the first test given where you didn't have to be a resident of the city to take the test. So, but he said, just to be safe, why don't you come down, move in, you can use my address, come live here, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Good guy.
Oh, real good guy. So
Yeah.
I went down there, took the driver's test, got my address changed to his address, and I was going back to school. So I went back to school in Minnesota. And they gave the test in July, and then I went to sign up. It was too late. But somebody sued because of age discrimination. So they reopened up the test, and I took it in October of 1985, and I was able to get hired. But basically, the reason I became the police is because I enjoyed working with the men and women that all wanted to be the police, and that I enjoyed helping people and doing the job that we were doing, because we were basically like a little police force, though we had pepper spray instead of guns. But all we did was just help people out and lock up a few knuckleheads around the place and that sort of thing. But it really was an eye-opening experience.
When you got when you got on the PD in Chicago?
Well, getting on the PD in Chicago, I thought I'd seen a lot working in some low-income areas of Minneapolis, but moving to Chicago and then getting my own place and then encountering Inglewood, which was my first assignment in 7.
Yeah. Well,
it was a very eye-opening experience.
Yeah, and I believe we talked a while back, and I mentioned to you that back in the 70s, Englewood was like the police suicide capital of the Chicago Police Department. I mean, literally, they had a good number of guys taking their own lives there. It must have been a horrible place to work. I worked around there, and then I was at Englewood when I was SOG, and Englewood was rough. It was the homicide capital of America for a while.
It was, and it could hold its own, even though Fillmore usually beat everybody out. But nevertheless, Inglewood, the thing about Inglewood is it's 20 square blocks. It's from 55th Street to 75th Street, from basically 2000 West to about 200 West. So it's a very small area. It also had the most sex offenders.
Really?
In the city of Chicago, had the most sex offenders living in that area.
Well,
at least back in the day.
they had the courtroom upstairs of the station back then?
Yeah, there was a courtroom in 18 when I moved to 18 in 1990 to 1994. The courtroom, I think, left 93 or 94. Does that sound
Okay.
about right?
I guess.
And they actually moved. I think they moved in like 1995. I was already gone. And maybe the courtroom left.
No, they moved after I left. I retired in 98.
Okay.
So that I retired out of the old 18th district station. So
Okay.
our paths must have crossed, although I'm sure we both look rather different now than we did back then.
Surely do. Feel a whole lot different too.
But you worked with some friends of mine, and my best buddy, my friend Kenny Lunsford, who was a heck of a cop. My gosh.
Oh, yes.
And you made sergeant out of there, or what?
No, I ended up going to special operations. What had happened was I had taken a leave of absence in 93, went to St. Paul, Minnesota for a couple months, and then came back. Right around the time Dantrell Davis got killed over in Cabrini. And I just wasn't fitting in with St. Paul PD as I had hoped I would. My
So you went to
fiance
the
at the
St.
time.
Paul PD.
Yeah, I did. For a minute. I went through their academy and they treated me like gold. I absolutely loved the guys there were great, but I think I just had too much Chicago in me to at that time, even though I came from Minneapolis, St. Paul area, I think I had too much Chicago in me. By that time I'd been, I guess, ruined by what Chicago offered. And at the time, my fiance wasn't finding work like we thought she would. So we ended up coming back as soon as I graduated. We left and came back to the city and jumped right back into tag team in the 18th district.
Not
And
a
then,
bad job.
yeah, it was a great job, but it was a lot of, as you well know, it was very rewarding and very frustrating all at the same time. So
Best
then
of times and the worst of times.
yes, exactly. Just like Dick had said. Um, the old partner of mine had moved to special operations. He had gone to the gangs west, and then that died off and became special operations. And he was looking for a partner. Talked to a lieutenant who called me and said, "Hey, are you interested in coming over?" And that's how I ended up leaving 18. Is I went to special operations, which is the old SOG, and I made sergeant out of there.
Well, good for you. That's great.
Yeah.
SOG was great. I did three years in SOG. It was a great experience, But
Uh-huh.
that was back in the day when they had Area 1, Area 2. So
Uh-huh.
we were in Area 2, and they folded that, and I ended up going to Area 1, and then I
Uh-huh.
made detective out of there.
Detective. That's the job to have. That's the
That's
one I
another story.
missed.
Yeah, well, listen, I was there when Jane Byrne came in,
Uh-huh.
and I liked Jane. I liked her. She gave us a union and everything.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. But a lot of things happened, and yeah, that's a long story. I was in Area 2 SOG, and then I was in Area 2 burglary, which that's a whole new story. I will tell my own stories on that, but I'll tell you what, I was supposed to go, just to make it brief, I was supposed to go to robbery, or thought I was going to robbery when I was in detective school. And then they said, no, you're going to burglary. Somebody bumped me out of robbery. Well,
right.
I was very upset because the guy who was in charge of the robbery unit really liked me. When I was at Area 2 SOG, we were making a lot of felony benches, and he was always involved. John Birch. So basically, and
Name
John was a
rings a
good
bell.
guy. Yeah, yeah, it sure does. If you Google him, unbelievable. But probably the best thing that ever happened to me was not being assigned to John Birch, because I have friends who were working for John Birch, or were working in homicide, which was next door.
Uh-huh.
And they are still in court.
I know a couple of those guys myself.
Yeah, it's a shame. But so anything on the Chicago PD you might want to share that the experience that you might think be or unique enough for public, because I
Public
know
consumption.
I got obviously Cabrini motivated you to write a book. I see that, and
Well,
I want to talk about that.
I started the second I got out in Inglewood, I started a log in a journal to try
Better
and
man than me.
keep track of stuff for writing. That was the whole idea. Because remember, I was in college, I was an art major. So, and I don't know that it's any one specific type of art that I need to have the creative outlet out. So it was painting, but I always wanted to write. In high school, I discovered reading. And of course, you discover reading. What do you want to do is you want to write. So I wanted to write too. And then in college, I ended up, after a few years of drifting through majors, ended up in an art degree. Loved it. And then came out, but I didn't have my own studio. I wasn't producing art at my house. I had too many distractions. I wasn't focused enough on it.
Do you remember the S&D?
Yeah, the Stop and Drink, of course.
Yeah, right out the back door of the 18th district.
Yeah.
I don't think people would I mean, I think during the day that was like a real bust out or something bar.
Sure.
And it was right out the back door of the police station.
Mhm.
And we used to just go right out, just detour from our car and go in there. And I remember that place because I came from the South Side. I was kind of in shock when I got in 18. And I'm in there on one side, they had two TVs going. One had a Rambo movie on, and the other one had X-rated porn.
Sure.
I'm like, this is where the guys stopped. You know, we're in the 18th district, the premier police district of the Midwestern United States.
I would agree with
Everything
that.
was there. Culture, restaurants, great bars,
No,
featured
you're
in
absolutely right.
movies. And here we go, and we're in the S&D. I could stop and drink.
Stop and Drink is you would have regular movies, you'd have straight porn, you'd have gay porn, you'd have the hooker sitting next to you that you locked up 2 days ago,
Yeah.
having her drink, and you guys would be talking, and
Yeah.
we're off duty. Everybody's
Yeah.
off duty here.
Yeah. Yeah. And somebody, at least one time, somebody put a bullet in the wall there. I
At
know
least
that.
the ceiling, maybe?
Yeah, well, there's a hole in the wall, that brick wall out there. Yeah. That was quite an experience. I will name one name, and I want to do a special on this person. And Mailbox Marilyn.
Yep. Oh, I had a lot of experiences with her. 100%. Oh yeah. We used to encounter her. I used to encounter her there when I was there as a patrolman, right? In the early 90s. And she was there when I came back as a lieutenant. She was a little bit more worn
To say the
from
least.
living on the streets for 20, 30 years, yes. But she was a very survival was pretty incredible woman.
Yeah, she
Crazy
was.
as the day was long.
Yeah, or at least she portrayed that for sure. But she used to,
yes.
I was on that Rush Street detail for some years, and she was always on Rush Street. She would go from bar to bar and just stand out there. And there was a guy called Black Danny. He was another kind of a panhandler regular there. And they kind of got together, and they would stand in front of a bar and shout out racial slurs to each other. You know, like they're getting you this and you that. And the doorman would give each one of them a sawbuck, for those who don't know the vernacular, $10 to go away. Then they go to another bar and do it there. And they did pretty good there. Mailbox used to, if some guys in line to go into Mother's. The Mother's was famous in the movie About Last Night. When I was a kid, Mother's was mentioned in Playboy magazine. I think the #1 singles bar in the country. But she would go there, and if guys who were in line to get in knew her, they'd give her a Finsky and say, grab this guy's coolies. And she'd just go, grab his coolie, whip a breast out. Hey, baby, suck on this. It was just a crazy.
Yeah, it was.
Unbelievable. And you know why they called her Mailbox? You remember that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. She was hooking, and she'd always get robbed. So what she started to do to save her money is she'd do a trick. She'd have an envelope with a stamp on it, and she'd mail her money to her after each
To herself.
session.
Yeah. That's how they call the Mailbox.
Clever.
Yeah. She was clever. There was always rumors going around that she had $200,000 in stocks and everything, but who knows?
Yeah.
You spent a lot of time in Cabrini-Green, which was.
Yes, I did.
Was Jane Byrne, the mayor, living there when you were there?
No, when I came on, Harold was the mayor. and he was mayor for a couple years yet before he passed away, and Sawyer took over, and then Little Richie come in. I came in under Fred Rice, and then Leroy Martin came in shortly after that. So
But you spent a lot of time in Cabrini when
yeah,
you're working.
when I transferred to 18th District from Inglewood, and when I did, um, I was assigned to Pat Logan's watch.
Patsy Logan, good guy.
Patsy Logan, and Pat says, "Oh, you come from the ghetto. I'm going to put you in the ghetto." So I became the new 1822, which was the Cabrini-Green beat. I worked that for about a year until I got brought to the TAC team. And the TAC team I got put on was a Cabrini-Green TAC team. Was Dave Strain's old team, and Kenny Charles and Kenny Lunsford, and
Great
those
guys.
guys.
Great
All
guys.
good dudes. All good dudes.
Man, we're super cops.
So
Super cops.
yeah,
So
Strain had
so
passed away by the time I got on there, but
so how did you
Lunsford and Charles.
go about the working in Cabrini to writing a book about Cabrini?
Well, like we had talked about before, I had started writing down experiences and jobs and something like that when I first came on. And I always kind of had in the back of my mind thinking about how I would want to write. I started writing books, I don't know how many times, and stopped and lost track and lost focus. But there's something about Cabrini that is universal. It's known worldwide as this difficult place to live and work and violent. And so it became a natural focus. And I think maybe part of it is I was able to start focusing a little bit better. And I was starting to gather different tendrils that ended up making up the story of the initial book.
So, is there anything factual in the back of the story? Or did you take some things that you saw and created a story out of it?
Well, there was a lot of things that were like really close. For instance, we were about to get off one night, and there came up a car exploded in 1160 Sedgwick. And we're all running out of the office, about to punch out and leave. We're running out of the office, hopping in the cars, and I'm thinking, obviously we're speeding there. I'm thinking, what if my informant was in that car? The car was chained up, so he couldn't get out of the car and blown up intentionally. You know, and that wasn't what happened, obviously. But nevertheless, that scene made its way into a book. One day I was on the way home, it was snowing really bad. And middle of the night, I'm on the way home from working, getting off at 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever, from the TAC team. Now I'm on the way home, and the Dan Ryan's jacked up, and we're creeping in this snowstorm. And we get up as we're passing whatever street. There is the Illinois State Police have evidence processing truck there and a bunch of trooper cars. So I started thinking, well, what if that was a body that got dumped on the side of the road? What if that was experiences like that kind of made itself. It wasn't the case that day, though. The crime lab was there, the crime scene technicians were there. Some kind of crime must have transpired.
So, this
Now,
was your first book?
the first book out of Cabrini, yes. I always say that there's nothing real in out of Cabrini. It's all kind of these close experiences that I've kind of changed. However, in out of Cabrini, I used some robbery decoy. And those experiences, I think I used 2 or 3 of them as things that happened inside the book. And they're kind of comic relief is what they are. However, they were real. Obviously, I don't have any names in there or anything like that, but those were real experiences in robbery decoys. Like the one time the officer's leaning up against the wall, acting like he's sick, and he's got his wallet sticking out of his pants pocket, and this guy circles the block 3 or 4 times, finally comes up to him and says, "Officer, your wallet's sticking out of the back of your pocket," and then walks away. So stuff.
Yeah.
So the robbery decoy stuff is actual, you know,
So,
experiences.
did you work decoys in 18 or in
Yeah.
SOG or?
Well, we did them in 18. We did the robbery decoys when I was there early on, and then we went and we tried to do some theft from car decoys, but the judge said it was entrapment, and we couldn't put a pack of cools on the dashboard of a car with its window half down in the back. that was entrapment. So we tried that as well, but had a lot better luck with the robbery decoys.
Yeah, were you there when they had all those thefts from vehicles over in Lincoln Park?
I remember the Michigan Avenue team. Those guys were phenomenal.
There was a sergeant who was working. He had a heart transplant, and he's out there with his heart transplant chasing people down.
I had a kid working for me when I was there as a lieutenant that had a pacemaker. He refused to get off the street. He's out there still doing regular police work, not what it transpires by today in today's market, so to speak.
Yeah, what would you say the difference is between what you just said, regular police work, and today's market?
Well, proactive police work is kind of had its heart ripped out, and I've been kind of going back and forth with myself, and I didn't want to throw anything at you unexpected, but I kind of got to thinking about what does old school mean?
Aggressive preventive patrol.
Aggressive preventive patrol, and that's what we used to do. And is that then therefore somewhat responsible for some of the conditions we operate under today with the body worn cameras and that sort of thing? I teach a class with a good friend of mine. It's my chief, and we talk about that. Hey, we're responsible for you guys having to wear cameras. The shit we used to do is why you're wearing cameras.
My son just retired from a police department where he was a director of training, police department, just outside of Chicago. Just retired, and he always accuses me of being the reason why they're having all the problems. But I don't want to get into that. But that's a debate, and for sure, we did a lot of things. But the big difference, I believe, was the politicians. It's always the politicians.
Yes,
the politicians back then kind of realized that in their world, the police were all that was left between chaos and a civil society back in the day of the old school cop. Now, the politicians see the police as a problem somehow.
Well, the police department is the biggest liability any village has, any city has, with the lawsuits. Just with their operating budget, operations, they cost the most. They usually have the most people working for them, and they certainly are subject, even if it's just you're talking about disabilities and injuries suffered by officers, and then those that suffer at the hands of the officers. Of course, that's always up for debate. Always up for debate.
Yeah, and I'm worried about my pension every month. I don't know if they're going to be able to cover it. As screwed up as that.
Detroit declared bankruptcy years and years ago. I encountered a couple of Detroit coppers, and they said that their pension was cut in half when they declared bankruptcy.
Now, Detroit was really corrupt.
We're pretty good at it. I mean, we're proud of our corrupt politicians in Chicago, and actually now the whole state of Illinois. And actually, you could probably extrapolate that out to the White House, couldn't you? Not current White House, past one.
Whatever. Yes. So we look at, you got another book, and it's the same character, Macbeth.
Yeah.
Is that what? Yeah, he is the main character of your book. He was a Chicago policeman in your first book.
Yes. Still is. He still is in the second one.
Now, what kind of motivated Chicago justice? Same stuff, but different.
Well, it's really it's a longer arc. So Cabrini starts a story that is continued in Chicago Justice. Chicago Justice stands on its own. You don't have to have read Out of Cabrini first, but if you have, there'll be a lot. You'll catch more things in Chicago Justice if you've read the first one. But it'll stand on its own. And I'm currently working on a third one that progresses the story even further.
The Chicago story.
Yep.
Well, because I'm looking at your third book here.
Well, yeah, the Western.
The Stand for the Dead. That looks pretty cool, too. Is that a totally different ballgame?
Yeah, it's totally different because it's a Western. It takes place in around 1870. The publisher that originally published Out of Cabrini, which came out originally in 2006. It was republished in 2025, but it originally came out in 2006. the publisher ended up they didn't go out of business, but they stopped selling thrillers and mysteries, which is what Out of Cabrini is. So I had gotten an agent. I had continued to write. I had 3 or 4 books I had written. I wasn't getting published. And a good friend of mine said, "Hey, Dave, why don't you write a Western? The people that did Out of Cabrini are only doing Westerns now." He's like, "So write a Western. I'm sure they'd love to have you," because it was one of the best-selling books for that year. So I said, "Okay." I didn't have a current project I was working on. So I'm like, all right, I've never written a Western. I'm not a big, huge
So
consumer of Westerns.
did you do some traveling to kind of?
Yeah, I ended up going because location is really important to me. Because location in the Out of Cabrini and Chicago Justice, Chicago is a character. As it should be dealt with a character, the city is a character. So to me, location is important. So I ended up taking a trip out to South Dakota. I'd been out there before.
Been there.
Yeah,
Pretty impressive.
gorgeous. Very
Yeah.
gorgeous. Love the people.
Uniquely gorgeous.
Yeah, it is very unique. It's really kind of normal until you hit the Missouri River. Once you go past the Missouri River, now it's the West you've seen in the movies, the West you've come to understand. So, yeah, so I ended up writing the Western, and I was almost done with it. I was about 3/4 of the way done with it, and the publisher stopped doing Westerns. Now they were only doing large print edition Westerns. So we approached them, and they said, we'll do an original large print edition. So they went ahead and they did it, but they said, we only want the large print edition rights. Go find a conventional publisher to publish the book regular. So when we did that, we found a publisher out of Milwaukee that would do it, this Genius Book Publishing. And so they did Stand for the Dead, and they said, you got any other books we could publish? And I said, well, I had this one in 2006. I own the rights to it again. And they said, oh, we'd love to do it. I said, oh, by the way, I have a sequel. They're like, even better. So they were real happy to publish it.
Good. So you're rolling now. You got a 4th book coming out?
I got another book coming out in June. It's different yet. It's a female character. DEA agent is the protagonist. Takes place in Minneapolis, up in Grand Marais, up next to the Canadian border in the middle of the wintertime. I was really fascinated with the idea of isolation. Taking this young woman, putting her in an all men's organization, and then isolating her up north in the middle of the wintertime without any backup.
Yeah. So going back to the Macbeth character in Chicago Justice, is there anybody you focused on that kind of created that character, or did you just make this guy out of, or is it a mix of people?
I want to tell you, I made him up completely. But the fact of the matter is, there's probably a good portion of me in it, because I have him being from Minnesota. He's a hockey player, even though I never played hockey. To I was never any good at it. I kind of wanted to bring that perspective of an outsider looking at the city, and that kind of
as I did,
exactly.
Yeah.
So bringing some of my perspective to it. I don't want to say he's made after me, though. That I think as a beginning writer, it's really common for guys to put a lot of themselves in their main characters. But there's me in every character in the book, because I thought of them. But there are also people like Kenny Lunsford I used for the Barnhill character. He was kind of the foundation I used for the Barnhill character. And actually, Barnhill is my mother's grandmother's maiden's name. And Zito is the maiden name of a buddy of mine's mother, who was kind of the foundation of the Zito character. And the same thing with Hagen. And a lot of the guys, I would go ask them, what's your mother's maiden name? And I would use that as the last name of the character. So
this is a kind of a loaded question because I already have an opinion of this, but the Chicago Police, I don't even know the name of it, but the TV series, the Chicago Police, or
Chicago PD.
Yeah, Chicago PD. That is huge. I mean, that had a huge following.
It does.
It's kind of cool that it's shot in Chicago. It's kind of cool to see that it's a dynamic city to see.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'm just going to go on and say this. Yeah, it just was everybody was too sullen all the time for me. I mean, one of it's there's so much grab ass going on in the Chicago police. There's so much laughing and giving you a little jab, and if they didn't like you, they didn't mess with you. And
No, you're right.
it just that series, the chief, their commanding officer and their supervisor is everything is very grim, and they're speaking in hushed tones. I thought, no, that ain't the Chicago police I work with.
No, and I think and again, that's just the Hollywood executive, Hollywood writer perspective of what it's supposed to be like. They're not spending any time riding along to speak of anything like that. They tend to they'll come to town and they'll go out and they'll meet a lot of officers and they'll start buying them drinks and buying them dinners. Oh, we're going to make you a technical advisor. And all they're doing is pumping the stories out of them. And then once they dry them up, they stop returning phone calls and they don't call anymore to take you out to dinner. But they want that dramatic, um, kind of tone.
The guy who wrote the Lincoln Lawyer series and the Bosch series, he was an L.A. crime reporter. Apparently, he used to drink with the cops and do all that. We had one in Chicago. I remember he used to come to the Boss Bar with us and drink with us sometimes. I don't know if you remember the Boss Bar, but
it's in the book. It's in the book.
And then he kind of stabbed us in the back. He kind of used this. But the guy who wrote and that was a great series, Bosch. I love that series.
I did too.
And Lincoln Lawyer, I liked it too. And but the only thing is you can see that I read all the books. You can see that the guy did not like the police, and Bosch was his conduit, his little mechanism to really kind of point out the bad parts of the police. And Bosch was he was kind of an outsider within the police. He's fighting with everybody, he's arguing with everybody. But that was a great series.
It was, and Michael Connelly certainly is a gifted writer, and
in my opinion, he's a cop hater.
Well, and there's a lot of times I would agree with you. He definitely has a liberal slant. You see it particularly in the later time in the writings. I'm a big fan of his too, but sometimes I'm gritting my teeth when I'm listening or reading it. John Sanford is somebody I followed significantly out of Minneapolis.
John Sanford, I got to look him up.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to look you. I'm going to read your books first, sir. You get them on audio too, right?
Unfortunately, right now they're not on audio. They're on Kindle. They're on Amazon.
Well,
in paperback.
Yeah, I've got them right here on Amazon. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, Sanford's good, but again, Sanford has, they're not the police. Really, the only one, a big famous writer was Wamba, and he certainly
was a cop. Yeah, he was a cop. Yeah,
his career obviously is I believe he passed away, but he has
he felt our pain basically.
He did. When I had finished writing a book, I started looking at one of the books that hasn't been published by the name of Takedown. I started looking. I always look for an agent. I had an agent for a little bit till we had differences of opinion, and I'm looking for an agent. I'm going online and looking at their websites, and all I see is George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, all this stuff, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to get an agent. I had one agent, Chicago Justice, not spoiler alert, tell me we can't have a white officer shooting an unarmed black man. I'm like, well, why can't we? It will open up a conversation. We can start a dialogue. It's justified. There's nothing illegal about it. I'm not trying to skirt anything. They don't want to hear it. It's just cut and dry. Boom. We're not talking about it. No. The answer is no. And it's just difficult. The older I get, I'm now a white man trying to publish books. That's not popular with this big segment of society. And 99% of the people running publishing right now, they're not
Yeah,
interested.
for sure. And I don't think it's as big a segment of society as we may be led to believe. I believe that it's the segment of society that is pretty much telling us what we should think at any given time. I'm going to share a personal story on here one of these days. I probably my second year, almost the end of my rookie year, I was off probation. And I shot a black woman down like a dog in the street. That's what they said. And I shot this black woman in the kneecap. It literally saved her life because it's a long story that I'll go into some other time. But I went through hell. And that was back in 1969 or 1970.
Oh, wow.
I went through hell with that. And
You went through hell because you were being put through that, or did you put yourself through that hell?
No, I went through hell because I was put into the situation. That's another whole story, how I got put into the situation. I mean, it's a crazy story. It shouldn't have never happened. I should have never been in this situation with people who weren't doing their jobs, who were, how desk personnel, sometimes not so good desk personnel, so there's good ones, but they'll blow something off. I'll go back home and call 911. That's kind of how I got into this. But what happened is she had, remember Gus Savage? He was a congressman with the worst attendance rating in all of Congress when he was in there. He was her attorney, and they were going to try to sue me. And but they waited 13 months in court getting continuances until she pled guilty to aggravated assault with a knife. It was like psycho. And that was a long time to think about that. Meanwhile, Internal Affairs, I had a black sergeant investigating the case. And he's a good guy. He's a good guy. But I don't know why they have you young white kids working in these neighborhoods like this. Put me in a white neighborhood. I enjoyed it.
Wasn't your choice.
Yeah, it wasn't my choice, but I made the best of it. But they would not close that IAD case, Internal Affairs case, until she pled guilty in court to that aggravated assault on a police, because he was sitting, apparently that investigator was sitting on that situation all that time. So even back then, things were sticky, and I had a lot of great black partners I worked with. I worked in 3, 4, 5, 6, Area 1, Area 2. I was all South Side. I worked with a lot of black guys, good guys, back you up. But it's just how it is,
Chicago is a very unique city in that way. In fact, I think in Chicago Justice, I have a character make a statement about, it's not just black and white. And the politician, mind you, the politician in the story says, this is Chicago. Everything is about race. And that is Chicago, especially. Everything is about race.
Which brings me to another. You let me raise interest in another story that I'm gonna post here, and that is arresting the Reverend Jesse Jackson. I arrested Jesse Jackson.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, and that was way back in 1969. I was still in my rookie year. I hit the street in '69. I won the academy right after the Democratic Convention. Nobody wanted to be the police, and you didn't have to grease a politician back then. Anyway, so I went to the academy in '69. I got out, and that was the following summer, and it's a pretty interesting story. I'm going to tell that one. But so Chicago Justice. So you kind of go into these issues in Chicago Justice.
Yeah, I do.
These real life issues that you experience.
Yeah, and it's also real life experience and just what I've seen. I'm kind of setting up the overall arc. Didn't start out in Out of Cabrini this way, but I'm kind of looking to possibly go down in a George Floyd thing. The politicians wanting to make some movement. She's using Macbeth and some of the things that happened to him. She's twisting it out of perspective and presenting it in a different way.
You triggered me again. You just keep doing this. This is like an interview with me. And I was I was working in 18 at the time when Rodney King. In fact, I was working a rush street detail and I was pissed off at those LA cops. I thought this is ridiculous.
Well,
And
hold
then
on now.
I
You're
looked
talking
at,
about Rodney King.
oh, yeah,
No,
similar
similar,
situation, but nobody
similar
died.
situation.
But anyway, Rodney King, are you familiar with that, right?
Absolutely.
I was so pissed off at those cops until I realized that the LAPD stopped teaching them how to swarm somebody because they determined they had to lower strength and size standards to accommodate, back then they didn't call it DEI, but to accommodate all the smaller people they wanted to bring onto the police department, ethnically and gender-wise. So they determined through their studies, and LA was really sharp. They did studies back then. They said they determined that the average LA police officer couldn't control a single arm from a relatively formidable adversary. So they said we can't do. They only taught swarm the guy to the bigger cops. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but the bigger cops sued and say, wait a second, why do I have to make bodily contact with this person when everybody else gets to hit them with a stick? So they changed it. So you could only learn the swarm technique back then if you ordered the video cassette out of the training center and put it on after roll call or at your own time, watch it. They just never trained it anymore. And what they did, the Rodney King, was bam, bam, bam.
They had those PR-24s with the handle sticking out.
Yeah, yeah. And they were taught, this is what they were taught. In fact, they called it compliance through pain. And now we take it one step further. The George Floyd case, those cops, in their training manual, they were taught to hold somebody down, a formidable adversary down with the knee across the back of the shoulders.
Yep, it was all training.
Apparently, from my understanding, I don't want to get sued over this, but apparently the chief of police or some major officer in the Minneapolis PD actually lied on the stand and said we never trained anybody on that.
You would think it'd be hard to be able to just lie like that because they should have manuals and paperwork.
Oh, they do have manuals, and there are manuals available that show that. There's a movie, like a documentary. I think the fall of Minneapolis or Minneapolis Burning or something like that. I'll find it and I'll send it to you.
I think a friend of mine had sent me that. I hadn't taken a chance to watch. It's pretty interesting,
and they go into that.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking of writing a book about this,
I'm putting the Macbeth character in a situation where he's being accused of doing something that the reader knows, having been there, what it really was, and now seeing it getting twisted, how it can be twisted to be used against somebody.
Absolutely. What's the officer's name? For God, forgive me for not remembering his name. Who's in a prison right now for this, killing a man who actually died from a drug overdose, in my opinion. Anyway, he was a sacrificial lamb.
I agree.
I watched different news sources. I watched Sean Hannity and Dan Bongino. Of course, Hannity was pushing because he's the martial arts guy. And he said, yeah, this is no way to do, they were making a decision on what happened, on the procedure that the policeman used. They never took that back, or Hannity never, it was his show. He never said, oh yeah, they were trained to do that. Never brought that back because Officer Chauvin was a sacrificial lamb. They did not want the country to go up in fire, but it still did. So they said we got to sacrifice somebody, and that's Chauvin. Those other three guys that were with him, they were like almost recruits. They got screwed.
For sure, two of them, I think, were still on probation.
Yeah, it's horrible. Just horrible.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was, and unfortunately, the media isn't particularly interested in telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
God, no.
There's certainly times when you wouldn't look good with the whole truth told, but there's a whole lot of times when it would be justified.
But bringing us back to the camera. If you were in your right mind, sometimes you you get drawn into things.
You can-
And that's a mistake. And being objective is a difficult thing to remain objective dealing with people. But you try. But there's things I've said over the years that
for
I might have been in a little trouble or no crime, but so go on.
I
I
always
interrupted you.
I always looked at it when I was in 18, and I was on 2 or 3 cameras at any given moment. And that was before the body cameras came on. There was always something rolling, whether it was the bar camera, it was the guy's alley camera, it was the home camera. There was always somebody recording, and then the cell phones came, and you just always on camera. But it's still hard to have that body worn camera when you were older and had these habits formed. I went to 18 the first time, right out of Inglewood. I pulled a guy over by the old Grant Hospital, turning on the Lincoln from Webster, and the guy cut somebody off or something. For whatever reason, I pulled this guy over, and I approached the driver's side, and I had a partner who went to the other side, and it was an attorney. And he's like, I'm just coming from court. And I laid into this guy, told him, in no uncertain terms, he was an asshole. And he's lying, give me your driver's license, shut the fuck up, otherwise you're going to get in more trouble. And we get back to the car, and the kid I was working with, Johnny Caparelli, says, you can't fucking say that, Dave. You're an 18 now. You're not in Inglewood no more. And, this he's an attorney. He's got privilege coming from court. And it's like, no, you don't, bud. Quit lying to me. Because at the time, night court wasn't a thing. It hadn't started yet. So I'm like, it's 9, 10 o'clock at night. You're not coming from court.
I remember, outside of some high-end restaurant, which was also a hangout for a lot of these traders and lawyers and stuff. There are slick guys going to different restaurant bars up near Rush Street or State Street. You see a brand new Mercedes parked on a fire plug. The True Justice was calling for the tow. It was great. This was great.
Goes without
oh my
saying.
God, you're towing my car. I won't mention his name, but he was a prominent player, and it wasn't Michael Jordan, and it wasn't Rodman. Rodman, I ran in a couple of times. He was a gentleman, but this guy, we won't say his name, but he had his car parked illegally somewhere near Rush Street.
Yeah, it was on State in front of, is it PJ Clark's? Yeah.
And the tow guy got into the car. I guess he used the little slider to get the door open. Went in there, and he had a gun at the time. It was unlawful to have a gun in your car in Chicago. It may still be. And he locked him up. And when he locked him up, and the guy said, "You know who I am?" And he said, "I won't go into detail exactly what he said, but he said, you're a man with a gun." And he arrested him. And that particular guy had to do community service for his infraction. And again, I won't mention his name, but the waitresses from the nice restaurants that he used to frequent, they called him, and I won't say his last name, but they used to say no tipping, blah, blah, blah.
Yep. Yes,
you
they
mean
did.
No tipping so-and-so?
Yeah. One of the stories coming up from that young man, he was at Hooters, and they had blocked off the back of Hooters for him and another teammate to sit. And they were having dinner by themselves, not bothered. And one of the waitresses came up, his waitress, and said, "Hey,
wait a second. Let me say it. This is a story we heard.
Yes.
We don't know this for sure.
We don't know for fact. And she said, "Hey, there's a man and his son over there. He's super fan of yours. Would you sign this napkin or whatever?" And he says, how much are they paying you? She said, $10.
My God.
He said, "Give me $5, I'll do it." So he split it with her.
Yeah.
So his reputation was well deserved.
Yes. Before we go, is there anything else you want to say about the books or any particular? They're available on Amazon.
They're available on Amazon.
Else?
And they can look at my website, Dave Case Books, and there's a link to Amazon at Dave Case Books, and there's a link to the publisher, which is Genius Books Publishing out of Milwaukee. So they're available that way as well.
Well, Dave, thank you for sticking it out here.
No problem.
I had a good
Thank you.
time.
And me too. I really appreciate the opportunity. Number one, I really appreciate you reaching out to me. I want to say thank you and good luck. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, let me know.
Just two important things. Please like, share, and follow us. Share the hell out of it. We need all the help we can get. That's one. Number two, cops write the best police stories, be they fiction or true crime. Why? Because they know how the system works. They don't have to make anything up. When you're reading it, it's how it works in the real world. Below, you will find a link to all of Dave's books. That link will take you to Amazon. It'll give us a small commission for sending you that way. We get a little bit to help support Old School Cops. So please go down below the description. Click on the link and pick a book. Support Dave, support Old School Cops, and once again, thank you for watching.
Old School.